Oh, it is good to be back. Pac-12 Happy Hour presented by Deschutes, Yogi Roth, Ashley Adamson. We are officially a quarter of the way through the season by my math. We got a lot to talk about, Yogs, but first and foremost, I know yours is in the mail, but I got to give a shout out to our friends at Deschutes. In particular, Neil, Aaron, and Patrick, I love you, came home from a trip a few days ago and had like boxes of swag, just like everything we ever want. I mean, it was unbelievable. So I got my signage. Everything is in the mail. Yogi, you'll be all dialed in for next week, but just shout out to our friends at Deschutes who are awesome partners and sponsors. I wish that the beer in my fridge would last a little bit longer than it has, but we'll get some more dialed in.
That's right. Keep sending it. Let's go.
Keep sending it. All right. So, we're heading into the meat of Pac-12 play. There is a lot that happened this past weekend. And I think before we get into any of the matchups or any of the, specific sort of game within the game conversation, I want to talk about what you make of the non-conference slate now that we're through the bulk of it. And I want to frame this discussion by, reminding everyone, like from a conference standpoint, right? The goal is to get a team into the playoff, period. So here we are. The numbers are what they are, 16-16 in non-conference play, had some tough losses. We're not going to sugarcoat the loss to Northern Arizona or Montana, but our two biggest wins, LSU and Ohio State, are as big as any that you could ask for in the non-conference slate. So big picture this for me. How are you feeling as we head into Pac-12 play about where we sit?
I feel good. And I think, what's the point of a happy hour? Just to kind of kick back and have a little POV, a little perspective on life. And for our life right now and the viewer's life, it's college football and Pac-12 football specifically as I caught an earpiece. With that said, I think it's important to state a few things. One, 19 teams in the AP top 25, for whatever that ranking is worth, have lost this year. That has never happened before. That is a dramatic amount of teams. If you look at the last decade of college football and what we thought would happen has not happened. So there's more parity than ever before. I think that's number one. I think number two, when you look at the non-con records, and if you're going to comp them to other conferences, comp them with context. And the context is Mercer, UAB, I'm talking about Alabama and Georgia's non-conference opponent. It's not Fresno State or BYU. It's just not. And I think that's fair to state. I think as we continue on and dive into the Mountain West losses, they've happened. San Diego State, they've looked very impressive. They've taken out a couple Pac-12 teams. BYU, of course, is undefeated against Pac-12 opponents. Even San Jose State looked good in their game against USC. I've asked this many times, like, name a player that opted out for the NFL draft from the Mountain West Conference. There's not one you can think of. There was a DB from San Diego State who did it. But my point is that the super senior thing for that league is extremely beneficial for that league. I mean, so much experience, whether you're looking at the defensive front of San Jose State, you're looking at the quarterback play at other places, just the defense overall at a lot of these schools. I mean, I look at what Brent Brennan's done. I look at what they've done down in San Diego. They're playing with veterans, and it's obvious in that regard. So the games are just going to be more competitive. So I think just kind of level setting that in that regard is number one. I think number two, if I asked you, would you trade Cal, Nevada, and let's just say another loss? Say take Stanford, K-State. Would you trade those two and say, all right, we're going to lose the Ohio State game and lose LSU as a conference? No way, right? So I think the narrative and the reality of the perception of the league is Ohio State is real. I called UCLA Fresno State. I still think they are real. The Trojans, here we go. They got new life, a new head coach, maybe a new quarterback. They got a chance. ASU, I still can't believe they're a team that's going to commit double-digit penalties every time out. Well, they corrected as they enter conference play this weekend. Stanford, they became the team, Ashley, you and I thought they would be when we saw them in training camp. They host the Bruins this week, and I'm calling that game. So I still think there's teams where you look at it and say, man, like, real argument for these teams. They could go play against anybody else. So I say that, and then my final thing is let's just look at the fans at the top of every other league. Oklahoma fans, how you feeling? Not that great. Iowa State fans, you had a loss. A Big 12, nobody's feeling great. Texas, clearly they had a challenging loss early on in the season. Let's go to the ACC. Clemson, they haven't done anything. They scored an offensive touchdown. Or excuse me, they haven't given up a defensive touchdown. And offensively, they can't score points. right? They're not the team we thought with DJ against Notre Dame last year. The rest of that conference has struggled. Georgia Tech took them to the brink. Miami has dramatically struggled. Florida State, I mean, come on. So I think as we go around, Big Ten, Ohio State's already made a change of defensive coordinator. Michigan looks like the best team, maybe Penn State. And then you go to even the SEC, and Bama gave up over 250 on the ground against a Florida team that we didn't think they'd run the ball like that. So I think within that, I think there needs to be context and a calming effect, as I hope you've popped your second beer by now, as I give my opening statement of our happy hour.
You know what, Yogi?
As you should.
Cheers to that. I'm gonna.
Cheers to that.
Your point, though, I think is well taken, because 3 weeks, here we are, 3 weeks into the season, and it's easy to feel like, oh, the sky's falling. But if you just step back and look at it, Oregon, we haven't even talked about Oregon. They're undefeated. They have everything in front of them. They have, the biggest non-conference win that they could ask for. They're going to hopefully get Kayvon Thibodeau back and healthy relatively soon. They're poised to make a run. Stanford, if Kansas State is their only loss, Kansas State is ranked. UCLA, if Fresno State ends up being their only loss, like same with, and then you look at USC and ASU. So to think that, oh, the sky is falling and we had some bad non-conference losses. Yeah, we had some bad non-conference losses, but we had some great, fantastic wins. And so I think it's easy to overreact on any given Saturday night. And that's why we're here on Tuesday, to take the temperature down a little bit. Okay, you mentioned that you were at the Rose Bowl on Saturday for just one of the most unbelievable finishes and performances that we have certainly seen and that we've had on our network. Jake Haener, the former UW quarterback, and what he was able to do against the Bruins. It was heartbreak for Chip Kelly and UCLA, but a masterful performance for him. As they head into this week against Stanford, obviously it's a critical game, their first Pac-12 matchup. Road game. You will be on the call with Ted Robinson, 3:00 on Pac-12 Network, if I'm not mistaken. Give me a big picture, kind of what you're thinking about as you head into this matchup, because I think there's a lot to talk about, specifically Tanner McKee and what he's been able to do as the starting quarterback since taking over in week 2.
Well, I'll say, Ash, this. I can't wait till next week. I'm holding a beer in one hand, and the other hand is going to be this. This is a clicker. This is what I use Sunday, Monday, Tuesday to watch every snap of all of our games. And I finished breaking down Stanford and UCLA earlier this morning. And to me, this is going to be, it's the best conference game we're going to have at this point in the season. It's the best game of the weekend, in my opinion, in our league. And within that, you have a Stanford team that made a decision at quarterback after the first game of splitting reps, and it's clearly Tanner McKee's team. You look at what the offense has done since he's become the starter. They've averaged over 40 points per game, averaging over 7 yards per play, scored 83 points, and undefeated. And you go back and you watch the SC game, that's Tanner's best performance. Last week, he missed a couple things in the Vandy game, but man, the threat with his legs, the first touchdown they score, it's a zone read game. They've used that before, right? Kevin Hogan is one of those players. But man, Davis Mills, good athlete, but not nearly what Tanner is. And Tanner's all a 6'6". And the point of that is when he takes a step, he gains 1.5 yards, 2 yards every time. So I imagine the QB run game will be an impact in this, and he can deal. Much like we saw Jake Haener, Tanner McKee's got a chance, in my opinion, by the end of the year to say he might have the most arm talent in the conference. I think he's got a chance to be the face of this league going into next year. And their weapons, you'd put them up against anybody in the conference, whether it's John Humphreys, Elijah Higgins. They got 4 backs they're playing. Ben Urasek finally had a game in terms of making plays at the tight end position. So if you look at what Fresno did in terms of throwing the ball, I think UCLA is going to get challenged. And then when you flip it, you say, well, Vandy ran the ball a little bit. And I watched that. I was surprised by seeing that this morning. Is UCLA going to get Zach Charbonnet going? Right? He didn't get going. Fresno State took the running backs away and said, Dorian, you beat us with your legs. And he beat him a couple times, but not enough to have a game breaker touchdown play like we saw in UCLA's first 2 games of the season. So this one is going to be awesome. You look at the respect between both head coaches. Go back and track it. We'll have the graphic of Oregon, Stanford, and the great tilts. This class starts for both schools this week. Fans are going to be on the farm. So I think it's built up to be an awesome afternoon contest at 3:00 up there.
And you talking about Tanner McKee and some of his numbers, I am thinking as I'm sitting here with, by the way, the best name of a beer that I have seen in quite some time. This is the Squeezy Rider West Coast IPA from Deschutes. And it is described as effortlessly West Coast. So I think we should start giving a Squeezy Rider Player of the Week award. Like, this is very different than Player of the Week, Defensive Player of the Week. Like, this is Squeezy Rider. So can I nominate Tanner as our Squeezy Rider Player of the Week for what he did? against
I
Vanderbilt?
think we should. I think we need to. He makes it look effortless the way he just kind of flicks it. I think he would edge out Jackson Dart just a little bit, right? Because Tanner's been climbing and they got the win against SC. I'll give him that. He kind of built up the momentum. So yeah, I say we give it away. Give the award to him. I don't even know if he's 21 yet, so I don't think we can give him a cocktail. But
Yeah.
cheers to you.
Cheers to you, Tanner, the Squeezy Rider Player of the Week. Okay, you mentioned Jackson Dart, and that's, I think, a topic that deserves its own conversation, because USC going on the road against Washington State, Dante Williams making his head coaching debut after Clay Helton gets let go last week. And it did not start well. Their plane, tipped back on the tarmac. I'm sure everyone kind of saw that on Twitter. That was insane. It's pouring rain. They started in a hole down 14-0 against Washington State on the Palouse. And it felt like, oh God, this is not the debut that Dante Williams is wanting. Keaton Slovis gets knocked out in the first series. So Jackson Dart, true freshman, comes in. He had some, hiccups early on, had a few passes I'm sure that he would want back. But when you looked at his numbers by the end of the day, 45 straight unanswered points, and he just willed that team to a win. It was unbelievable. It was like we were watching USC football. I thought a lot of people saying like, oh, it feels like USC football is back, and the excitement and all the rest. Now, it was essentially one half, and it was against a Washington State team that had their own injury issues. What do you make of the decision that I guess Dante Williams is making this week, based on his comments in his press conference, about who the starter is going to be?
I enjoy it, and I enjoy it with context. Again, I think if you read a lot of quotes, they're different than when you watch or see it, the video correlation of those quotes. For Dante Williams, the way I took that, Ash, was, hey, with me as the head coach, every job, every week, you got to go earn. When we talked about that off air, I flashed back to my first couple years at SC. And I remember the first team meeting I was in for spring football, and Leinart had just won the Heisman. And Pete's like, Coach Carroll's like, every job is up for grabs, including you, Matt. And Matt loved it. He was like, yeah, let's go. Come on, John David. Come on, Sanchez, come get it. And I think that is the same as this scenario. I think for me, if I was going to project out, Keaton Slovis is the team captain. This is his team. He's going to be the starter for this team. Jackson Dart, you're going to get some burn, though. He's going to get a couple packages throughout the game. He's earned that. He's a change of pace type quarterback. I think that what he can do with his legs is a unique threat that SC has not had in, I mean, you could argue Darnold was athletic, but not like Jackson Dart. Go back to watch him in high school last year, over 50 touchdowns as a senior. This guy was, I think, going to Lafayette. And then they had high school football in Utah. He exploded. And I've been around him a bunch, Ash. This dude is poised. He's a gamer. He's the future of, I think, this team. And it's a highly competitive quarterback room, probably the most competitive in the South for sure when you just look at the overall depth at that position. But I don't think SC fans should freak out. I don't think they should also go down the road of Jackson needs to be the guy. And this dude was voted best quarterback in the league by the coaching staffs in this league multiple times. He's a legit Heisman candidate. Like, relax on the Keaton Slovis needs to go to the bench narrative, in my opinion.
Amen. I second that. Well, there is one other quarterback. Well, I should mention, so USC and Oregon State Saturday night back at the Coliseum. I think fans hopefully will show up and be excited and be supportive of this team. And look, Oregon State, they haven't played any world beaters, but you look at what they've been able to do, and including almost beating Purdue, they make the change to starting quarterback, and they've been firing on all cylinders the last couple of weeks as well. So I think it should be a good test, a good opening test for Oregon State on the road, obviously at USC.
Yeah, you think about like the quarterback thing in this league. It's easy to say it, but if you're like Utah, Stanford, Oregon State went with the other guy to start the season, maybe they're undefeated, right? Maybe. I don't know about the Utah one. Like, I didn't think Cam Rising lit the world up, but for Chance Nolan, I mean, there's a beer for Chance Nolan for sure. This guy was a third string quarterback. He was back deep in the fridge. Nobody really wanted him necessarily. They brought in the flashy beer and Sam Neuer, and he just hung. He just hung and kept working, and now he's operating the system. Missed a couple throws this past weekend. Watched that game this morning as well. But man, he's fun with his legs. He's active with his legs. His own read quarterback running game is a part of Oregon State. He made some deep balls down the field, but they need to come out, and when they have opportunities down the field, actually they can't miss. Idaho, their offensive line, they get a keg I mean, they dominated the front, and they should have dominated that defensive front, but it's a different deal against SC. It's a totally different beast. So I'm curious because if Oregon State can get this win, easily the biggest win since the Oregon game a year ago, but contextually in a regular season, man, to come down to LA with recruiting and Jonathan Smith being from here at SC, this is going to be a massive win if they can get it. The stage is set for them to go have the upset, but they can't miss. He can't miss a deep ball throw. They can't drop a deep ball. They got to make plays contested. Some things where they went 50-50, in my opinion, against Idaho last weekend.
I'm going to give Chance Nolan my honorable mention Squeezy Rider Player of the Week because I think for all the reasons that you just mentioned, he's come out and he's balled and has made it look at times very effortless. So hats off to him. Okay, so we are coming into the first full week of Pac-12 play. A lot of different matchups, but I just want to give you the floor. Like the thing that you're most excited to see, whether it's a matchup, a game, a matchup within a game. What are you having your eye on? What should people be having their eye on this weekend, Yogi?
Well, there's so much, right? I mean, we're fully into conference play, Ash. But as I go up and down the list here, I can't wait to see SC, right? Like, what's the healthy storyline at the quarterback position? Jackson Dart, Keaton Slovis, Jonathan Smith coming home. How do they handle that night game? Arizona State, I'm not ready to believe that they're a team that's going to have double-digit turnovers or double-digit penalties per week, and Colorado needs offense. Excited for that. Oregon, culture will win for them. I love the culture they have. They've created. They're playing a team that's been down. I bet Mario Cristobal's shown the BYU film a few times to remind him that Arizona can play. UW and Cal. I don't want to be a DB in Cal's meeting room this weekend, right? We talked about that offline. That's going to be a fun game. And can UW keep the offense going? Stanford at UCLA is the best game of the week. And Wazoo and Utah. Last time they played, this was a game. So I can't wait just to – every game has enough storylines to say, yeah, got to either DVR that one, watch it in real time, subscribe to Sling or something over the top, whatever you got to do to watch these games, you got to watch them all.
Before we go, I think we got to, you mentioned it, Utah, Washington State, the storylines abound in that matchup. And the biggest story of the week, Charlie Brewer, not a quarterback at Utah anymore. It came down this morning that he has left the program. So I guess just first and foremost, this is Cam Rising's team now. What did you make? What was your reaction when you heard that Charlie Brewer was out?
Double take, first and foremost. I'm sure you did as well. Like, what? Really? And then on a serious note, where my head immediately went was, I hope that he took a pause, Ash. I hope that the people around him took a breath and said, is this the right move? I know that he could still apply for a redshirt year. I know he could still have another year. But when I watched the games back this morning, I did not see, when he was in or when Cam Rising was in, an offense that was operating on all cylinders. That's not a shot at the offense. That's the point, is that I don't know if Utah football, if he was still there, would have said, goodbye, you're not going to play a snap the rest of the year. I wish that he stayed to have a chance to go run the offense in the job that he won in training camp, an offense that he seemed to have mastered after spring football. He had moments as the season went on, but their offensive line has had some challenging moments as the season's gone on. Pass protection has been challenging for them. So it's not like he was the only issue on offense. And I agree with Kyle Whittingham in making a change. You need a spark for your team. But man, was I bummed out. Like, granted, I don't know the context of everything, but if you look at it very simply, of he played, he got benched, he got relegated to the number 2, and then he decided to take off. I'm saying, man, I've seen this before. I wish you just stuck around, because you would have got, in my opinion, likely another opportunity, knowing what goes on in the length of an entire season.
Well, Yogi, exactly to that point, you think about Cam Rising and someone who did stick around and who didn't win the starting job and who obviously got named the starter last year, got hurt, and then battled for a starting job again, lost out, and now here he is. So yeah, there's some synergy and some, kind of larger lessons you can apply to that whole situation. The pregame show is going to be there. So Nick Aliotti, Najee Burton, and myself is going to be back in Salt Lake City. I cannot wait. It's one of my favorite places to go. Can't wait to see the Muss. And there's going to be a lot there. And again, Jaden DeLora, he got hurt against USC. We'll see. We hope he's healthy. But it should be a good matchup, and two teams that, again, we should mention, you can hit the reset button now that we're going into Pac-12 play. All of your, goals as a program, for the most part, are in front of you, and a chance to make to the Pac-12 championship. So it's going to be good. I'm going to have my squeezy rider ready to go on Saturday all day.
Yeah, you should. A short list for the Squeezy Rider Player of the Week next week. It might be
Yeah.
Cam Rising. Smooth going guy. How does he operate this offense? And I do think, Ash, we should look at every week, right? Does a coaching staff get a case of beer for an
Hmm.
incredible performance, or does the staff need a case of beer after a challenge performance? I'd love to hear from the people watching, like, what award should we give out every week with some Deschutes beers, swag, all the fun stuff that we get to do here?
I love that. I love that. Yeah, leave it in the comments. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you want to talk about, and we will hit it again next week. We're going to do this again, except this next time you're going to have your Squeezy Rider.
Oh yeah, a couple, at least two. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for following along, everybody. See you next week.